Discovery and destiny. The quantum particle detector wasn't supposed to explode. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the smoking ruins of her life's work, scattered across the MIT laboratory floor like broken dreams. 3 years of research, gone in an instant. But that wasn't what troubled her most. It was the way the machinery had failed, releasing a burst of energy that should have been impossible according to every known law of physics. And yet, she hadn't been hurt. Somehow, the energy had curved around her, like water flowing around a rock in a stream. The security footage would later show a faint purple shimmer in the air, though Sarah hadn't noticed it in the moment of crisis. "Dr. Chen, are you all right?" Her research assistant, James, burst through the laboratory doors, face pale with concern. "The sensors went crazy, and we detected some kind of..." He trailed off, taking in the destruction. "I'm fine," Sarah said, brushing silver-streaked black hair from her face. At 32, she was young for a leading quantum physicist, but her brilliant mind and intuitive understanding of particle behavior had accelerated her career. Though I can't say the same for the QPAD prototype. She crouched beside the wreckage, her olive skin reflecting the emergency lights that still pulsed overhead. As her fingers brushed against a twisted piece of metal, it hummed with an unfamiliar resonance. Sarah yanked her hand back, heart pounding. She'd felt something similar before, in quiet moments when her experiments seemed to speak to her, but never this strong. "There's something else," James said, checking his tablet. "We're picking up unusual communication signals. They started right after the explosion. And there," he swallowed hard, "they're coming from somewhere beyond lunar orbit." Before Sarah could process this information, the laboratory's heavy security doors sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Red warning lights bathed the room in a crimson glow as klaxons began to wail. "Multiple unauthorized entries detected," the facility's AI announced. "Security protocols engage. Please remain calm." Sarah's Aunt Lynn had always told her that one day everything would change. When the time comes, she'd said, "Trust your instincts." Sarah had dismissed these cryptic warnings as the eccentric ramblings of her only living relative. Now, as heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor outside, those words rang with new significance. "James, the backup lab." Sarah grabbed her tablet and a small crystal pendant, a family heirloom she always wore. "There's another way out through there." The footsteps grew closer. Through the laboratory's glass walls, Sarah caught glimpses of figures moving with inhuman grace, their forms obscured by what looked like advanced combat suits. Not military, not any organization she recognized. As they rushed to the backup lab, Sarah's pendant grew warm against her skin. The crystal had always been unusual, seeming to glow faintly in darkness, but now it pulsed with an inner light that matched her racing heartbeat. The backup lab's door wouldn't open. Someone had overridden the security systems. Sarah placed her hand against the scanner anyway, more out of desperation than hope. To her shock, purple energy crackled from her fingers into the mechanism. The door slid open. "How did you?" James began, but gunfire interrupted him. The intruders had reached the main lab. The shots weren't normal bullets. They released bursts of contained energy that melted through equipment with frightening precision. One blast struck near Sarah, but again, the energy deflected away from her body as if repelled by an invisible force. "Target located," a mechanized voice announced. "Princess, please remain where you are. We are here to ensure your safety." Princess. Sarah's mind reeled. The crystal at her throat grew brighter, and suddenly memories began to surface. Memories that didn't feel like her own. A grand chamber with 3 moons visible through crystal windows. A tall woman with Sarah's eyes, speaking urgently to someone just out of view. The taste of alien fruit and the sound of music played on instruments that shouldn't exist. "Sarah," James's voice snapped her back to reality. "Whatever's happening, I think these people are here for you. But your Aunt Lynn, she left something in my care. Said if anything strange ever happened, I should make sure you got it." He pulled a small device from his pocket, something that looked like a hybrid between a smartphone and a piece of ancient jewelry. As soon as Sarah touched it, symbols illuminated across its surface, symbols that matched the strange markings on her crystal pendant. "Your mother was the crown princess of Asteria," James said quietly. "Lynn told me everything, made me swear to protect you if they ever came. She said you'd know what to do when the time was right." The device in Sarah's hand hummed to life, projecting a holographic message. A woman's face appeared, a face so similar to Sarah's own that she knew instantly this was her mother. "My dearest daughter," the message began, "if you're seeing this, then the time has come. The power you feel awakening within you is your birthright. Earth was meant to keep you safe until you were ready, but now both our worlds need you. Trust in yourself, trust in the powers that are part of your heritage, and know that everything I did to protect you." The hologram flickered out as the laboratory doors began to buckle under sustained energy fire. Sarah looked at the device, then at her pendant, and finally at her own hands where purple energy danced between her fingers. She had always felt different, always known somehow that she was meant for something more. Now, as reality shifted around her, Sarah Chen, daughter of Earth, and heir to an alien throne, made her choice. The doors exploded inward, and Sarah raised her hands. The power that had always lived inside her, waiting for this moment, finally answered her call. Purple light blazed through the laboratory like a newborn star, and the battle for two worlds began. Powers awakening. 3 hours after the laboratory incident, Sarah sat in her Aunt Lynn's basement sanctuary, watching purple energy dance between her trembling fingers. The room, hidden beneath an ordinary suburban Boston home, was filled with technology that definitely hadn't come from Earth. Holographic displays covered the walls, showing real-time data about both local and deep space activity. "Your mother hoped you never need to know," Aunt Lynn said, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by the sharp focus of a warrior. She wore her graying hair in a tight braid now, and her flowing gardening clothes had been swapped for a sleek uniform bearing symbols, similar to those on Sarah's pendant. "But the Void Collective doesn't leave us much choice anymore." The Void Collective. Sarah watched as James worked with Lynn's equipment, monitoring the perimeter defenses they'd activated around the house. They'd barely escaped the laboratory, safe by what Lynn called a short-range matter transfer, technology that felt suspiciously like teleportation. "Think of them as cosmic parasites," Lynn explained, adjusting controls on a device that kept them hidden from orbital scans. "They consume civilizations, absorbing their technology and knowledge. They've had their eyes on Earth for centuries, but Asteria's protection kept them at bay. Now, with your grandfather ill and no clear successor," she gave Sarah a meaningful look. "Because my mother disappeared." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the hologram's message. "To protect me. From them." Partially. Lynn's fingers traced patterns in the air, bringing up new displays, but also from those within the Asterian court who feared what you represent. "You're not just any princess, Sarah. You're what our people call a convergence, a being born of two worlds, capable of wielding powers neither civilization fully understands." As if to emphasize the point, the energy around Sarah's hands flared brighter. A nearby monitor sparked in response, its display scrambling before stabilizing. "I can't control it," Sarah admitted. "In the lab, it just happened." "Your human DNA altered how the Asterian abilities manifested," James said, looking up from his work. "According to these readings, you're not just channeling quantum energy like a normal Asterian. You're creating new forms of it." Lynn nodded, which is exactly why both our friends and enemies are here. The Void Collective believes consuming your power would let them break through Asteria's defenses, and certain factions in the Asterian court want to use me as a weapon. Sarah finished grimly. She'd seen enough of human politics to recognize how power could corrupt. The idea that alien civilizations might be just as flawed was strangely comforting. A soft chime echoed through the sanctuary. One of the displays showed a ship entering Earth's atmosphere, massive yet somehow invisible to conventional radar. The Royal Guard, Lynn explained. They'll try to take you to Asteria immediately. They believe it's the safest option. But you disagree. It wasn't a question. Sarah had spent enough time with her aunt to read between the lines. You're not ready. Lynn's face softened, not just in terms of power control, but knowledge, understanding. Your mother believed humanity had something vital to teach you, something you'd need to be a true leader. The sanctuary's lights flickered as Sarah's power surged again, responding to her emotions. This time, instead of fighting it, she tried to direct it. Purple energy coalesced into a sphere above her palm, spinning like a miniature galaxy. Integration, James said suddenly. That's what humanity could teach. We're not the strongest species or the most advanced, but we adapt, incorporate new ideas, find ways to bring different perspectives together. Sarah thought about her work in quantum physics, how she'd always approached problems differently than her colleagues. She saw connections they missed, patterns that seemed obvious to her but revolutionary to others. Had that been her heritage all along? Not just Asterian power, but a human ability to bridge different ways of thinking. The sphere in her hand pulsed, and suddenly Sarah could feel the quantum fields around her. The hidden electricity in Lynn's equipment, the subtle vibrations of space-time itself, even the faint resonance of the approaching ship, all of it connected in ways that both her human science and Asterian abilities could understand. They're landing in the park 2 blocks away, Lynn announced. Sarah, whatever you decide, know that your mother wanted you to have a choice. You don't have to. The sanctuary's defenses screamed to life. Multiple ships were entering the atmosphere now, their energy signatures radically different from the Royal Guard's vessel. Void Collective, James confirmed, his fingers flying over the controls. At least 3 cruiser-class ships. They must have followed the Guard's entry vector. Sarah stood, the quantum sphere still spinning above her palm. In its swirling depths, she saw possibilities. Paths that combined human ingenuity with Asterian power in ways neither civilization had imagined. How long can your defenses hold them off? 20 minutes, maybe less. Lynn was already activating additional systems, her movements precise and practiced. The Guard will detect them too, but they're too far out to reach us first. Then we have 20 minutes for my first lesson in power control. Sarah reached for her pendant with her free hand, and it resonated with the energy she now held. I'm not running, and I'm not hiding. If I'm going to protect either world, I need to understand who I really am, all of who I am. The sphere expanded, its purple light filling the sanctuary. This time, Sarah didn't try to contain the power. Instead, she thought about integration, about finding balance between opposing forces. The energy responded, settling into a steady pulse that matched her heartbeat. James, monitor the quantum fluctuations, she said, her scientist's mind already analyzing patterns. Aunt Lynn, tell me everything you know about Asterian energy manipulation. If the Void Collective wants to see what a convergence can do. A smile curved her lips as displays around the room began responding to her power, human technology synchronizing with alien energy. Let's show them why they should have left both our worlds alone. Above them, the evening sky filled with ships preparing for battle. But in Lynn's hidden sanctuary, Sarah Chen, quantum physicist and alien princess, daughter of 2 worlds and master of none yet, prepared to demonstrate just how dangerous understanding could be. Power danced around her, neither purely human science nor completely Asterian magic, but something new, something that might just change everything. First stand. The void-collected ships darkened the sky above suburban Boston like artificial storm clouds. Sarah stood in the park where the Royal Guard's vessel had landed, purple energy streaming from her hands into a domed shield that protected both the Guard and her small group of allies. Each impact from the collective's weapons sent ripples through the quantum field she was learning to manipulate. Your shield harmonics are destabilizing, called Commander Ven, the Royal Guard's leader. Tall and silver-skinned, He'd been shocked to find the princess he'd come to escort already engaged in combat. "You need to modulate the frequency." "No," Sarah said through gritted teeth, her mind racing through quantum equations. "The instability is intentional." She glanced at James, who monitored readings on his tablet. "What do you see in the scatter patterns?" James's eyes widened. "The energy isn't just being deflected. It's being absorbed and redirected through quantum tunneling. You're creating microscopic Einstein-Rosen bridges." "Wormholes," Sarah confirmed, allowing herself a small smile despite the strain. "Very, very small ones. Every shot they fire is being partially redirected back to their own shields, weakening them systematically." Aunt Lynn, now wearing full Asterian battle armor, laughed. "Using their own power against them. Your mother would be proud. She always said humans understood the art of turning weakness into strength." The Void Collective ships pressed their attack, their weapons becoming more frantic as they realized their energy weapons were becoming less effective. Sarah felt sweat beading on her forehead as she maintained the complex quantum network she created. Her human body wasn't used to channeling this much power, but her mind, trained in both Earth physics and awakening to Asterian knowledge, saw patterns within patterns. "Incoming transmission," announced one of the guard's officers. A holographic screen materialized, showing a figure shrouded in writhing shadows. "Convergence," the figure's voice crackled with artificial harmonics. "Your ability to manipulate quantum fields is impressive. Join us willingly, and we will spare this primitive world. Resist, and we will take what we want anyway." Sarah straightened, never dropping her shield. "You know, for an advanced species, you're making a pretty basic mistake." The purple energy around her hands intensified. "You're assuming quantity of power matters more than understanding how to use it." She nodded to James, who had been quietly interfacing his tablet with the guard systems. "Now." James activated a sequence they'd prepared in Lynn's sanctuary. The quantum tunnels Sarah had been creating with each deflected shot suddenly shifted, linked together in a complex network of microscopic wormholes. Energy from the collective's own weapons began to flow through them in a carefully calculated pattern. "What are you doing?" Commander Van demanded, watching as his instruments registered massive power fluctuations. "Creating a quantum resonance cascade," Sarah explained, her voice strained but confident. "Their shields operate on a principle of energy absorption and redistribution. But if you understand the underlying quantum mechanics..." The sky lit up as the network of wormholes reached critical mass. The collective ship shields began to flicker as their own reflected energy overwhelmed their system's ability to compensate. Sarah had turned their greatest strength, their advanced energy manipulation, into a vulnerability. "Last chance," she called to the holographic figure. "Retreat, or I'll show you exactly what happens when human physics and Asterian power work together." The figure's shadowy form writhed in apparent anger. "You cannot hope to." Sarah closed her fist, collapsing the quantum network. The accumulated energy released in a controlled burst, overloading the collective ship's shield generators. Emergency systems engaged, forcing them to retreat or risk complete system failure. As the ships fled into the upper atmosphere, Sarah finally allowed her shield to drop. She stumbled, exhausted, but Lynn caught her arm. "That," her aunt said proudly, "was something neither of our peoples would have thought possible. Using their own shield mechanics against them, but understanding it through human quantum theory." "Impressive indeed," Commander Venn agreed, though his tone remained formal. "But it also demonstrates why you must return to Asteria immediately, Your Highness. With power like that, untrained." "I am trained," Sarah interrupted, steadying herself. "Just not in the way you expected. My whole life studying quantum physics, pushing the boundaries of human understanding. It wasn't an accident. My mother knew exactly what she was doing." She turned to face the commander fully. "I'll go to Asteria, but not as a student who needs to unlearn her human knowledge. Everything I am, scientist, human, Asterian, it's all part of who I need to be." "And who is that exactly?" Venn asked, his expression unreadable. Sarah looked up at the sky where the collective ships had vanished. Someone who can help both our peoples face what's coming. Because those ships, she gestured upward, that was just a scouting party. They'll be back, and next time, they'll be ready for simple quantum tricks. Simple, James muttered, checking his readings. You just created a controlled network of microscopic wormholes and used it to overload advanced alien technology. Exactly, Sarah said. Imagine what we could do if we really started combining our knowledge, human creativity, and scientific understanding with Asterian power and technology. She turned back to Ven. That's why they're so afraid of a convergence, isn't it? Not just the power, but the possibility of genuine change. Lynn stepped forward, which is why certain factions in the Asterian court might be just as dangerous to you as the Void Collective. I know. Sarah touched her crystal pendant, which still hummed with residual energy. But if I'm going to protect both worlds, I need to understand everything I can about both of them, including the politics. She straightened, and despite her exhaustion, power still flickered in her eyes. Commander Ven, I believe you have a ship waiting. Shall we discuss what happens next? As they walked toward the guard's vessel, Sarah felt the weight of both worlds settling onto her shoulders. But for the first time since this all began, she didn't feel overwhelmed by it. She was Dr. Sarah Chen, quantum physicist and heir to an alien throne. And she was just beginning to understand what that truly meant. Asterian dawn. The Royal Guard's ship emerged from hyperspace into a sea of stars Sarah had never seen from Earth. 3 moons hung in perfect formation around a planet that shimmered like an opal, Asteria, her mother's home. The capital city sprawled across an entire continent, its crystal spires and quantum architecture defying everything she thought she knew about engineering. Beautiful, isn't it? James stood beside her at the observation window, still documenting everything with his tablet. The Royal Guard had initially objected to bringing a human scientist, but Sarah had insisted. Though I have to say, the quantum field readings are even more impressive than the view. Everything here operates on principles we've only theorized about on Earth, Sarah agreed, watching streams of vehicles moving in perfectly synchronized patterns through the city's 3-dimensional traffic grid. But something feels wrong. Commander Ven approached, his silver features tight with concern. Your instincts serve you well, Your Highness. The city's defensive grid is operating at unusual levels. The Royal Council has been in emergency session since we transmitted news of your encounter with the Void Collective. And my grandfather. Sarah had spent the journey learning about King Arian, the father her mother had left behind to protect her child. Stable, but weakening. Ven's voice softened slightly. He insists on seeing you immediately upon landing, despite the Council's objections. The ship descended through layers of security fields, each one scanning and authenticating their vessel. Sarah felt the quantum energies wash over her, recognizing her Asterian signature, while registering her human DNA as an anomaly. Everything here was both familiar and alien, like a language she'd known in dreams, but never spoken awake. They landed in a private hangar deep within the royal complex. A delegation waited below. Nobles in flowing robes embedded with living crystalline circuits. Security forces in armor that made the Royal Guards look primitive, and at their center, a tall figure leaning on a staff of shifting metal. The High Counselor, Lynn whispered. Vezira, she's led the council since your mother's departure. Be careful. She's brilliant, dangerous, and standing right here, the figure called up as they descended the ship's ramp. Vezira moved forward with liquid grace, her skin the deep blue of Asteria's native population. Welcome home, Princess Sarah. Or should I say, Dr. Chen. Your work in quantum physics has been fascinating. Sarah met the counselor's iridescent eyes. You've been monitoring my research. Of course, just as we monitored your mother's interactions with your father. Humanity's understanding of quantum mechanics is unconventional, but occasionally insightful. Vezira's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I must admit, Your little display against the Void Collective exceeded expectations. Speaking of which, a younger noble stepped forward. The Council requires an immediate briefing on the exact mechanisms you employed. If you've discovered a weakness in collective shield technology. What my colleague means, Vezera interrupted smoothly, is that we're eager to understand how your unique perspective might help defend our worlds. But first, your grandfather awaits. They moved through corridors that seemed to shift and breathe, quantum architecture responding to the presence of royal blood. Sarah felt the power in the walls reaching out to her, recognizing something familiar yet different. Her human mind processed it through the lens of wave functions and probability fields, while her Asterian heritage sang with instinctive understanding. The throne room doors opened silently, revealing a vast chamber where reality itself seemed thin. The quantum field was so dense here that Sarah could see it without trying. Sheets of probability cascading like aurora borealis around a single figure seated on a crystalline throne. King Arian looked both older and younger than Sarah had expected. His form seemed to flicker between states of matter, as if he existed in multiple quantum superpositions at once. But his eyes, her eyes, she realized, were sharp and clear. "My granddaughter," he said, his voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "The convergence child. Come closer. Let me see what humanity has taught you." Sarah approached the throne, aware of the council members spreading out behind her. James and Lynn remained close, while Ven positioned his guard strategically around the chamber. The king raised a hand, and quantum energy swirled around Sarah like a gentle tide. She felt it testing her, measuring not just her power, but her understanding of it. Without thinking, she reached out with her own abilities, applying principles of quantum entanglement she'd studied on Earth to connect with the energy rather than simply letting it examine her. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the energies merged, creating patterns of light and probability that danced through the air. The king's eyes widened. "You see," he said, though Sarah wasn't sure if he was addressing her or the council. "She doesn't simply command power, she understands it, shapes it, questions it." He leaned forward. "Tell me, child, what do you see when you look at our defenses?" Sarah hesitated, glancing at the council members who watched her intently, but she remembered her mother's message. "Trust yourself." "Inefficiency," she said finally. "Your quantum barriers are incredibly powerful, but they're designed to resist direct force. The Void Collective doesn't work that way. They adapt, integrate, find ways through the smallest weaknesses. You're trying to build a perfect wall, when what you need is what?" Vezera asked sharply. "A immune system." Sarah turned to face the council. "Something that learns, adapts, and grows stronger from each encounter. Humanity survived countless challenges not by being the strongest, but by learning from every failure, every near defeat. We take what tries to destroy us and turn it into a tool for survival." The king laughed, a sound like quantum bells ringing. "You see, the strength of both worlds." His form flickered more pronouncedly, and not a moment too soon. "The Void Collective grows bolder, and I grow weaker. The power that protects Asteria needs a new guardian, one who can think beyond our ancient ways." "My king," Vezera stepped forward. "While the princess's ideas are intriguing, she has no formal training in Asterian quantum manipulation. The succession laws clearly state." An alarm screamed through the quantum field, causing the very walls to shudder. James's tablet exploded with readings. "Multiple breaches in the outer defense grid," Ven announced, his armor shifting to combat mode. "Void Collective signatures, but different. They've somehow partially matched our quantum frequencies." They learned from their defeat on Earth, Sarah realized. They're already adapting. She looked at her grandfather, seeing the strain on his flickering form. "The defensive grid draws power from the throne, doesn't it? From you." The king nodded grimly. "And I cannot maintain it much longer. The council believes we need a pure Asterian ruler to hold our defenses. But perhaps—" He held out his hand, offering his staff of living metal. Perhaps what we truly need is someone who can forge a new way. Sarah reached for the staff as chaos erupted in the chamber. The choice before her would change two worlds forever, if they survived the next few hours. The real test of both her humanity and her heritage was about to begin. Convergence. The staff of living metal hummed in Sarah's hands as the Void Collective's forces breached Asteria's outer defenses. Through the throne room's quantum crystalline walls, she could see the capital's skyline erupting with combat. Sleek Asterian ships engaged in desperate battle with writhing void-black vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. "The defense grid is failing," James called out, his fingers flying over his tablet. "They're not just matching our quantum frequencies anymore, they're consuming them." King Arian's form flickered dangerously as he maintained what remained of the city's shields. "The staff," he gasped, "it can channel the throne's power. But our traditional methods won't work," Sarah finished. She could feel it now. The way the collective was adapting, learning, consuming. They've evolved past simple quantum warfare. We need something new. She turned to Vizera and the council members. "I need access to the city's quantum core. Now." "Absolutely not." Vizera stepped forward, her face tight with barely controlled panic. "The core is sacred, the source of all." "All of Asteria's computational power," Sarah interrupted. "The quantum supercomputer that manages every system in the capital. I don't want to drain it. I want to reprogram it." The chamber shook as another attack penetrated the weakening defenses. Through the quantum field, Sarah felt thousands of citizens' fear and confusion. The Void Collective wasn't just attacking the city's physical structure. They were trying to consume its very essence. "Listen to her," Lynn urged, her armor shifting to deflect debris from a nearby explosion. "Sarah doesn't think like we do. That's not a weakness. It's exactly what we need." James held up his tablet, displaying complex quantum calculations. "She's right. The collective adapts by consuming and integrating new patterns. But what if we gave them a pattern too complex to integrate? Something that combines Asterian quantum mechanics with human chaos theory." "Impossible," one of the council members scoffed. "Human mathematics is too primitive to..." "To what?" Sarah's voice cracked like quantum lightning. "To save your world. Look outside. Your pure Asterian approach is failing. The collective doesn't just want our power. They want our knowledge, our patterns, our very way of thinking. So let's give them something they can't possibly digest." King Arian straightened on his throne, his form stabilizing momentarily. "Go. Vizera, take her to the core. The rest of you, coordinate with Commander Ven. Buy them time." Sarah grabbed James's arm as guards began escorting them to the lower levels. "I need you to send a signal to Earth, to my old lab." The quantum particle detector, it wasn't just measuring quantum fields, it was generating new ones. The explosion, James realized. You weren't failing. You were accidentally creating hybrid quantum states that shouldn't exist. They raced through corridors that twisted with battle damage, following Vizera to a massive chamber deep beneath the palace. The quantum core rose before them like a mountain of living light, streams of computational power flowing out to every corner of the city. "What are you planning?" Vizera demanded as Sarah approached the core's main interface. "Even if your human theories have merit, the energy requirements alone can be met by the throne's power, channeled through this." Sarah held up the staff, which pulsed in response to the core's presence. "But I need your help. All of you. I need Asterian knowledge of quantum manipulation and human understanding of chaos theory. Perfect order and perfect randomness, combined into something entirely new." Above them, the battle reached a fever pitch. The Void Collective's ships had formed a dark spiral in the sky, creating a vortex that began to tear at the fabric of reality itself. "They're attempting to consume the entire quantum field," Vizera whispered, her composure finally breaking. "If they succeed, they won't." Sarah planted the staff into a receptor beside the core. Purple energy, the unique signature of her hybrid heritage, began to flow. James, start transmitting the particle detector's data. Lynn, help me access the core's deep protocols. Vezira, I need you to trust me. The High Counselor hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. Tell me what you need. Sarah's fingers flew across the quantum interface as she began rewriting the core's fundamental algorithms. She combined Asterian quantum mathematics with human theoretical physics, creating patterns that followed both perfect logic and complete chaos. Through her connection to the throne's power, she felt her grandfather lending his strength, trusting her to forge a new path. They adapt by finding patterns they can consume, she explained as she worked. So we'll give them an infinite regression of patterns, each one spawning new variations faster than they can integrate them. A quantum virus made of pure mathematics, a human concept, Vezira noted, helping to stabilize the increasing power flow, delivered through Asterian technology. Exactly. Not one or the other, both, simultaneously. A true convergence. The core began to pulse with new energy as Sarah's hybrid code took hold. Through the quantum field, she felt the Void Collective's confusion as they encountered mathematical concepts that defied their understanding. Human chaos theory expressed through quantum mechanics that shouldn't be possible. It's working, James announced, watching the readings. Their ships, they're trying to consume the new patterns, but they can't process them fast enough. Sarah reached deeper into the quantum field, connecting with every defense system in the city. Purple energy coursed through the streets like living rivers as she activated her transformed network. The Void Collective's vortex began to destabilize as it encountered waves of hybrid quantum chaos. Now, she commanded, raising the staff. Every quantum processor in the city activated simultaneously, sending her mathematical virus directly into the collective's neural networks. Their ships began to spiral out of control as their adaptive systems encountered paradox after paradox. Perfect order and perfect chaos, impossible to consume or reject. The void black vessels started to retreat, their very substance teeming to unravel as Sarah's virus forced them to confront mathematical concepts their consumption-based intelligence couldn't process. A cheer went up from the defending forces as the dark spiral collapsed. Don't celebrate yet, Sarah warned, maintaining her connection to the core. This wasn't their full force, just their first real test of our defenses. They'll be back, and they'll try to adapt to this strategy too. But we'll be ready, Vezira said, and Sarah was surprised to hear genuine respect in her voice. Won't we, Your Highness? Sarah looked at the quantum core, now pulsing with new patterns that represented the best of both her worlds. Yes, we will. Because we'll keep evolving too. Not just Asterian, not just human, but something new. Something better. She felt her grandfather's approval through the quantum field as the staff hummed in her hands. The war wasn't over, it was barely beginning. But for the first time since the Void Collective had emerged from the darkness between galaxies, they had encountered something they couldn't simply consume and corrupt. They had found a power born of two worlds, wielded by someone who understood that true strength comes not from purity, but from the beautiful complexity of combination and change. Sarah Chen, quantum physicist, alien princess, and protector of two worlds, smiled as she began planning her next impossible innovation. The convergence had only just begun.